Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America Championship rolls into central Wisconsin. Race 1 yesterday, race 2 today on this legendary circuit. Road America, America's National Park of Speed, it is known, and it is one heck of a facility. Not just the racetrack, but the entire facility itself. A fan favorite, a driver favorite, and hopefully a favorite of yours after today. Welcome everyone, I'm Brian Till along with Ryan Marine. We'll have all of the action today. And if yesterday was any indication, there'll be plenty of it today. Talk about this facility though. It is special, Ryan. It is a racetrack, like I said, that everyone loves, fans and drivers alike. I always call it a 4-mile ribbon of asphalt that is a magical, magical place.
Oh, it totally is. Carved out of the natural terrain here in the middle of Wisconsin. Plenty of elevation change over a lap, 171 feet, in fact. And look at all these potential passing opportunities here. Turn 1, Turn 5, Turn 8, and Canada Corner. Just so much packed into 14 turns in 4 miles, and it's a great place for these Super Trofeo cars. You can really unleash the horsepower here, maybe unlike anywhere else on the calendar.
Talk about the speed of this Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2, well over 600 horsepower, and really the fastest GT cars you'll see run this weekend at this facility with the top speed. We talk about race number 1 being exciting. Let's take a look back at race number 1 before we get to today's contest. Action started pretty early on. Drop of the green, pole sitter takes off, and we are racing in round 7 of the 12 race championship, but then the action starts. Down into Canada Corner, Anthony Bullock aboard the number 12, gets into the side of Nick Grote, turns him a little bit, pushes him out of the way. That'll be a penalty. And then saw a very similar incident just a little bit later. The pro entry of Nick Persing, who had to start at the back, moving his way forward, gets into Jim Hepworth, push her off of the racetrack, gains the position. Officials didn't like that. Then a problem for the 14. Around goes Slade Stewart. No harm, no foul there. He'll get his number 14 Flying Lizard Motorsports Lamborghini back underway. And a little more excitement, and this is big time excitement, especially if you don't hit anything, you take a deep breath and say, thank goodness. Conrad Geese aboard the number 67 off at the kink. Couple of 360s and then back underway. And then a problem at the top of the shot. Paul Nimshoff off at the exit of the carousel, makes contact left rear into that wall, and that's going to be a problem. The 41 behind the wall as he returns to pit lane. Then the 65, Ray Shahid, just cannot keep it on the racetrack. Gets up in the gray in turn 14, coming on in the front straightaway. He goes around, but at the checker flags, big time celebrations. Remember, 4 different classes in LB Cup. The 57 takes the victory there, and that is big news as they'll move to the point in the championship. 48 in the AM category. David Staub takes the victory there. In 69, the 69 in Pro-Am. Jackson Lee, his first professional sports car win. He does it in Lamborghini Super Trofeo Evo 2 with Trent Hinman, and then the number 1 takes the overall win. And in Pro, Danny Framal, Hampus Erickson in the car at the checker flag, and that was big, Ryan, because they had been the championship leaders, lost the lead in the championship of Pro after Watkins Glen, where they had a dismal weekend, and now they are back on the hunt. 2 pole positions this weekend, and the race win in race number 1. 37 with an issue here on the pace lap around at the exit of turn 5, and again, we talk about 620 plus horsepower, Ryan. Hard to control that on cold tires.
Exactly, no tire warmers as you would expect at an IMSA championship, and that's a lot of power going to the ground on cold Hancooks there. So Clay Wilson will have to rejoin at the back of the train. You can see the starting grid to the left-hand side of the screen. The 4 different classes explained as well with the different class colors. You can actually see that on the cars too. But quickly to your point about the championship in the pro class, big day, as you say, for Erickson and Formal to bounce back, get their first win since the opening rounds at Sebring, and that vaults them into second in the championship. Now, De La Torre and Bamber did a good job to limit the damage. They finished in second, but they did see their lead shrink to just 7 points.
Yeah, it was interesting. Every point counts, and the pole position so important here. And when Wayne Taylor Racing stormed back with Erickson and Framal and took both pole positions, it really kind of threw the gauntlet down and let Bamber and De La Torre know, hey, this championship is far from over with. And as you said, now just a 7-point margin from De La Torre and Bamber back to Danny Vermael and Hampus Eriksson. Slow train up the front straightaway looking for the green, and a really slow start. They get into the start zone. Green flag waves. In IMSA, you must stay in column formation or across the line, but that was interesting. Hampus Eriksson really slow up the front straightaway, and I wonder if the officials are going to have something to say about that. They want you to maintain the pace of the pace car that they leave you with on the racetrack, and it looked to me like he was noticeably slow. And look at this, in the grass already, down to turn 3 action, and that's going to be contact. 63 involved, big hit there, lots of damage for Siderman. That will bring out a full course caution for sure. They're going to let the field get sorted out a little bit before they go full course caution. And is that the 14 also caught up in the mess? And a couple of other cars at the top of the screen able to get refired. This is going to be difficult for Andy Lee. Those rear Hancooks just in that gravel trap, and now more contact.
Wow. Not what you want to see on the first lap. There are some heavily damaged cars now. We do go full course yellow. So 86 involved in this as well. At least 3 cars heavily damaged here on this opening lap, Brian, and that's an easy call. Go full course yellow immediately. That was heavy contact.
Yeah, we're going to have to see what kind of replays we have of that. John Hirschberg with that big crash there, headed down into turn 5. And I almost wonder if he had some damage from the incident in turn 3 and got down that straightaway and something broke, but obviously significant damage to the cars down in turn 3 as you see the 63 there. And great to always see the AMR Track Services team arrive on these accident scenes as quickly as they do. Such professionals there, making sure that the drivers are safe and also helping to get things sorted, get that accident scene gathered up so it can be cleaned up and we can get back to racing as soon as we possibly can. But a lot of cars involved in this one, Ryan. This is going to take some time.
Yeah, I think you're right. Man, you really have to feel for Jonathan Hirschberg. Had the best run of his season yesterday, finished in 2nd. That's the best result he's had all year. Cederman, we saw out of his car, had a good qualifying effort, starting 4th in the AM class, but that comes undone. And man, there are a lot of folks that aren't going to be happy with the way this weekend wraps up. I think this is Sebastian Vassen here climbing out of his car as well.
Unhappy driver, as you can imagine. Let's take a look, top of the screen. And it's not the cars in the grass that we see in the beginning. It's the 63 getting into the 81 there. And we lose track of the cars to the left side of the screen, but you wonder if there's some contact. Slow motion at the top. So significant damage there, and there were several other cars that got wrapped up a little to the screen left that we didn't see. Andy Lee, one of those in the 14, but then we head down to turn 5, and let's take a look and see if we can see what happens here. See bits and pieces of cars coming off. Oh, someone runs over a mirror, and that gets the 86 upset. That's when John Hirschberg gets involved, takes the 99 with him as well. And for Rocky T. Bulldog in the 99, he has not had a good weekend. Take a look at the top of the screen. You just kind of see it. Hirschberg off. Rocky has absolutely no part in that, just an innocent victim.
Wow, it's been such a tough weekend for Rocky. Didn't finish yesterday, ended up in 8th and lost touch in the championship because of it. He came into this weekend on the strength of 3 straight podiums, including his first win of the season at Watkins Glen. But boy, this comes to an end abruptly for him and caps off what's been an altogether frustrating weekend and trip to Elkhart Lake. That's John Hirschberg. Good to see him out of the car, but that car's going to take a lot of work if it can even be repaired before the next round of the championship at the Indianapolis Motor Speedway.
Well, you talk about Rocky. He came into the weekend and in qualifying number 1, had contact with another car on the way between turn 7 and 8 in a straight line, and it rode off that chassis. He had to go to a borrowed car So the car that we just saw involved there was borrowed from another team. So yeah, you talk about a bad weekend. Rocky has certainly had one, and a lot of cars involved in this first lap melee.
Yeah, this is Wyatt Foster here, finished 5th yesterday with Seth Henry. Really loved the paint scheme. We talked about it sub yesterday. Looks like the rugs that I remember playing with as a kid with my Hot Wheels and Matchbox cars, but looks like they picked up a little bit of damage, able to attend to that in the pit lane, and looks like they were able to not lose a lap in that process. But so many cars damaged in this. This is Rocky Baldock, who was able to make his way back to the pit lane, and we'll see if that car can be repaired and he can be returned to the track. That would be big for him if he could, Brian, because, again, he is in the midst of a championship battle right now.
Just devastating and separate incidents. I thought maybe for John, he had some damage from the incident in turn 3. This is where it all starts going wrong. Top of the screen, you can see drivers off right side. The 63 comes back, makes contact with the 81. Significant damage there. You see the corner worker waving that yellow flag just as aggressively as he can, warning the other drivers. More got involved, like I said, the screen left that we couldn't see. And here's the mirror that you see. So car goes up and over it, and Hirschberg's right behind it, and I think that movement on the straightaway and perhaps the mirror coming out from underneath the car gets him to flinch just a little bit, loses control of the 86. And as we said, for Rocky T. Baldock, it's just, he's an innocent victim. The car comes spearing back across the racetrack and gets it to the side of him. And yeah, this is a weekend that Rocky's going to want to forget.
I think that mirror, it looked pink to me, and I did see a little damage to the front of the 69, the Jackson Lee car, coming in that shot down into turn 5, and we got word, and there's the confirmation that that car is being retired. So a winner yesterday in Pro-Am, Trent Hinman and Jackson Lee, but done here on the first lap. That's really sad to see. They had a ton of momentum coming into this race here today with that great result yesterday. We talked about it off the top. First professional sports car racing win for Jackson Lee a day ago, but somehow he looked like he was caught up in something earlier, had some damage, and maybe a part of that car came off. I'm not entirely sure, but it looked like it could have been that same color of pink, and that could have caused the problem that we saw erupt on the run down to turn 5.
Well, it was interesting because when I watched them push him behind the wall, the car is obviously on all 4 Hankook tires and was steerable to push behind the wall. So take a look one more time at that incident down into turn 5. Jackson Lee would have started on the 6th row, pink and black Lamborghini, and I believe that might be him to the left of the screen. Some damage, it looks like, perhaps on the front. There's the incident up at the top of the screen. I don't know. I'm wondering what the problem on the 69 is.
Yeah, I thought I saw a little damage on it coming into 5, but on second glance, I'm not so sure. So not entirely clear, although we just got a word from Jackson's father, Kevin, and I guess there was some damage with that start, that a couple cars came together, and maybe that's what's led to them having to retire the car. I might have to take back my guess that it could have been a part off that car. I'm not sure that it was that caused that issue, but in any event, wherever it came from, it had catastrophic consequences for several of the cars following behind.
Well, you wonder about the car that ran over that mirror. I mean, what Kevin was saying is Jackson got caught up in the stack-up effect, contact with the front end of his number 69 Wayne Taylor Racing Lamborghini Huracan, and hold a radiator. So that's the problem there. But, you know, it's just, you can say it over and over again, and I'm sure it was mentioned in the driver's briefing, you can't win in the first corner of the first lap or even the third corner of the first lap, right? And you get out there and all of that message kind of goes out the window, and you've got just this super aggressive driving on that run between turn 1 and turn 3, and it never seems to work out well. There's a car missing a mirror.
haven't talked yet too much about Sebastian Vossen, who we saw stuck in the gravel trap there. Had a great day yesterday as well with Kobe Shield. They also managed to get their first podium of the season, but ultimately their race ends here awfully early this time around. There's a car missing a mirror. Maybe this is the piece that we're looking for.
It would be Newell's, but that car seems to be further back than where the mirror would have come from. The problem for Dan Newell's is that's the driver's side mirror, and that's the one of the two, that's the one you probably use the most. There is a rear-facing camera that is used a lot, but that driver's side mirror might be the one that is going to be more important. Oh, there it is. There's one. Is that the one? We certainly know he lost it, that's for sure, and yep, there it is. We thought it was pink on that long shot. It actually happens to be orange, and then it gets collected. Crazy to think that a piece that small just caused the damage that we saw, but indeed, I think that was the catalyst that started all of that incident on the way to turn 5.
Now, great work by the whole crew to get to the bottom of that mystery. Felt like that was CSI Elkhart Lake there, trying to get to the bottom of what caused this. This is Vossen getting pulled out of the gravel trap, and he's dropped several laps. I don't know, it does look like there is some damage to the right side of that car. Well, yeah, we did see that hit the wall, didn't we? So, yeah, their day likely is done at this point. And everyone now just has to gather it back up, Brian. This is not the way that anyone hoped this race would get started. A lot of this time spent behind the safety car, and that is a look at a lot of the components you don't normally see on one of these Super Trofeo Evos.
And what I can see is expensive, Ryan. I mean, that's into the frame in the back, and obviously the left corner gone on John Hirschberg's number 86, and that motorsport is never inexpensive, but that's very expensive right there. Big time hit.
Yep, that one won't buff out, I'm afraid to say. If you cover this, I apologize for repeating you, but I did just see a penalty come across for car 44. That's the Wyatt Foster car that apparently was lined up in the wrong column. So that car, I think, has been involved in this because they made a trip to the pit lane already, but have been able to continue on, and that car will get a 10-second post-race penalty due to lining up in the wrong column coming to the green flag.
Well, and it's interesting because in IMSA, if there is a hole left in the grid, it doesn't matter when you leave the grid, you're supposed to just go right or left. Whichever direction the car in front of you goes, you go the opposite direction. And there were a couple of changes late to the grid. The final grid was put out, and the 41 had elected to start at the back, so that changed things a little bit, but that was on the official grid. That change should have been made, but then Mark Brumman did not show up on the pre-grid, and that left a hole. So you wonder if perhaps the team looked at the grid and said, well, you're on the right side, or the driver looked at it and said, you're on the right side, or you're on the left side. And so when they went out there, they said, okay, that's the side I'm going to line up on. They didn't follow the order of just right, left, as you left the grid. Felt like they were on the wrong side, so they went to the proper side as they remembered it from the grid sheet that was put out, and that would put you on the wrong side, and hence the penalty.
Yep, I think you're probably onto something there. We should mention that Mark Brumman story because that is really big in LB Cup. Now, Mark came in with the championship lead, albeit by just 2 points, but did not have a good day yesterday, did not finish, only scored 7th place points. And Nick Grote, who was second in the championship coming into the day yesterday, despite that moment that we saw in the highlight package where he was off track for a little bit and lost significant ground, he came back through and he scored the win. He also had class pole for both races, so he, coming into race 2 here, had already notched 17 points to erase that 2-point deficit and turn it into an advantage now of 11 points coming into today's race. So the LB Cup Championship has really flipped on its head, and for Brumman not starting this race, this has the potential to be a really disastrous weekend for him in terms of the championship and his hopes for it.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to know why they elected not to do that, but we talk about the 4 different classes in Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. Lights still on the Lamborghini Urus safety car. Obviously, a lot of damage to take care of, both with removing damaged cars and the wall as well to get the track ready to race on. But let's talk about the championships real quick. In the Pro Championship, we mentioned it at the beginning of the show, Formal and Ericsson, they're having a great weekend so far. I hope I just didn't deliver the commentator's curse. 2 pole positions in the win yesterday. They have closed that championship down. So Nick Persing drops to 3rd. Formal and Ericsson move up to 2nd. So there's movement there, and it'll be interesting. We still have a long way to go, right? We've got 5 more races. That includes today's race, and then we move to the Indianapolis Motor Speedway, and then the finale in Misano, Italy. So a lot of racing yet to go, but that championship has changed complexions.
It has indeed, no question about it. We've seen that completely swap on its head. There were some interesting results as well in Pro-Am with a lineup in Hinman and Lee that were not championship contenders because they're not running a full season coming in, taking the win. So Karlinskis and Trinka finishing 2nd. That was a good day for him. Geisen Hart actually had a pretty good rebound to finish in 4th and to stay in contention there. And it was a bad day, unfortunately, for Mark Miller and Paul Nimshoff down in 10th place, and that lost them some ground. And in the M class, too, we saw Glenn McGee and Graham Doyle struggle. They only finished 7th, just the second race that they have not won yet this year. Oh, I see. You've got a special at the bar, do you, Brian?
It's a little early in the morning for Brian Till Margarita. I'll just say that. All right, let's talk about AM Championship, because that one changed a little bit as well. David Staub with the win in the pole yesterday closes in on Glenn McGee and Graham Doyle.
That's right. That is the change in the championship there with their struggles yesterday. And it was a great day for Staub, who closes in. Hepworth and Brewer, their 3rd consecutive runner-up finish, too. So they're notching a bunch of really good points. And that championship really has tightened up as we get closer to the end of the season.
Well, and then we talked about Mark Brumman not starting today's race in LB Cup, and that's going to have huge implications. Nick Grote had taken the championship back over, as you mentioned earlier, but then you look at the disastrous day yesterday and then again today for Rocky T. Bulldog, and he's going to drop in the points a little bit. But really there wasn't anyone really close to Rocky, so, I mean, this one's going to be interesting. It's going to take some ciphering, so they used to say on the Beverly Hillbillies, to keep up with LB Cup. You're too young for that, aren't you, Ryan? You don't even know what I'm talking about.
No, Nick, I watched that on reruns, on syndication. That was a favorite of the family's, actually.
All right, lights out on the Lamborghini Urus safety car. Should be going green this time by, and this is where you've got to focus forward. We didn't have a good first lap. Obviously, the clock has been running the entire time, so it's one of those deals. Remember, 50-minute race, mandatory pit stop in the middle of it, and so you got to be thinking about drive time. That pit stop window is going to be there. It's going to be open relatively soon, so you got to think about when you want to play that window. If it's a 1-driver format, the pit stop, mandatory pit stop is 102 seconds. 2-driver format, 99 seconds. But before we get to pit stops, we got to get back to green, Ryan, and we got to have some green flag laps.
Well, fingers crossed with the single file restart we get some, because we've seen hardly any racing so far. But at the front of the field here, it's Hampus Eriksson, who again is taking his time getting it back to the front straightaway, and it does seem like Nick Persing is anxious, getting ready to go as soon as possible.
You know, I wonder about that, because that's a very, he doesn't get to dictate the speed. He's supposed to maintain the pace of the safety car to some extent. Gets to the restart zone, which is turn 13, and he is on it using all that 620 plus horsepower from the V10 in the back, and off we go. So the restart zone starts about turn 13 is where they can begin to accelerate, and that's exactly what Hampus Eriksson does. But again, he brings them down very, very slowly in a car already pulling off to the right, looking at pit in.
Somebody has maybe some residual damage that hasn't been dealt with. We do go back to green, though, and it is a great getaway from Hampus Eriksson. Nick Persing trying to bounce back from disappointment yesterday, sits in second, and Elias De La Torre really needs to pick up the pace here. This championship lead that they had built coming into Road America is starting to slip away and only running in third right now.
Pro cars in the top 5, Eriksson, then Nick Persing. He had his problems yesterday, and then the nearest pursuer, or the leader in the championship, I should say, Elias De La Torre, who will hand over to Will Bamber a little bit later. Jaden Conright in 4th, had a great run yesterday. And Garachi right now in the number 4 in 4th. Top 4 on the racetrack, all pro class entries. Look at this.
How about this?
Whoa. What a late move by the 11, Karlinskas, down into turn 5. I was wondering if he was going to get it slowed down, but that just shows you the faith that he had in the brake system. It shows you why he and his teammate are leading in the Pro-Am Championship.
Yeah, that's really good stuff. There you see it. Pit window is open. Move further back in the pack down through Hurry Downs. That is the 68 of Neugebauer to the inside of Staub. That is for 8th overall. 2 cars in different classes, but this is massive here, Brian. Just getting word, a penalty coming to the leading car, Hampus Eriksson, car number 1. A jump start. So let's take a look at this. What do you make of it, Brian?
Well, I mentioned it a little bit earlier. The restart zone starts, I was told, and per my reading, 13 out. He was at the beginning, at the entry of the corner. When he pulled the trigger, you could easily see the front end of the car raise up in the air under acceleration. It's one of those things the officials looked at it, and I think the combination of the speed and obviously where he jumped on the throttle is what caught their attention, and that's what's brought about the penalty.
There you see it, 10 seconds post-race coming to this car. They're going to hope this thing stays green the rest of the way, and they can maybe build a gap to try and manage that penalty and mitigate the damage. But wasting no time, calling this car in at the first opportunity. Nick Persing has stayed out, by the way, the only of the front-running cars to have done so. So he inherits the lead. Here he is. Black and red machine at the front of the field. Jaden Conright also has stayed out, but it's about to be a busy pit lane with a lot of the field taking this opportunity to get the pit stop taken care of.
It was interesting. Obviously, Wayne Taylor Racing in the number 1 feels like the faster of the 2 drivers is Danny Formal, so you want to get him in as soon as you can. You know you've got this penalty coming. You put your faster driver in as soon as you can and see if you can get him back on the racetrack and see what kind of a lead he can build up. You now know you've got this post-race penalty coming, so get your fast driver in and see if he can build up that lead and kind of mitigate that penalty.
That's what they're going to have to hope for, going to try to do. This also covers for a full course yellow inside of this pit window, which can have a big effect on these races if it comes at the wrong time for you strategically. As you see, no tire changes, no refueling. It's just the driver changes. In the case of the 2 driver lineups, the single driver lineups, they stay stationary for the entire time. And the only thing the teams can do is check tire pressure and maybe bleed a little air from the Hancooks.
Yeah, I'm just reviewing my understanding of the restart zone, and it is clearly marked in the driver briefing. It's actually the exit of turn 13, just past the access road at the corner exit of turn 13, so even a little later than I thought it was. But I watched, again, as you did, the acceleration of Hampus Eriksson there at the entry to turn 13, and that's probably, based upon the map that I'm looking at, maybe 75 yards, maybe even 100 yards too early.
Yeah, it doesn't take much, does it? And I mean, it's just the smallest of margins in something like this. To make that difference, but man, this is potentially a massive penalty for them in their championship hunt. It had been the perfect weekend to this point. Again, this is right there, entrance to 13.
And the restart zone is right there. So
yep,
you can see the access road on the map. It's marked as right there. When you go across that line, you can go, and he was easily at the entry to the corner. You saw the front end of that Lamborghini raise up as he went to the throttle, and pretty easy call for the officials to make.
It is. Now, the good news is this car has had pace all weekend long. Danny Formal in particular has been incredibly fast, and there is every opportunity for them, if this race stays green, to try and build a gap. If that gap can be up to over 10 seconds from second place, not going to be easy to do by any means, but it is possible, then they can maybe get away with this one. But the worst thing for them would be a yellow at the end of the race that would bunch the field altogether. That would cost them 10 seconds, would equate to a lot of track position with that field all condensed behind the safety car. So what they'll be hoping for is a clean and green run to the checkered flag to try and mitigate any penalty here.
See what kind of lead Danny Formal has. He comes back around, see if he's beginning to pull out. We won't really know the final order until after all of the pit stops are done and the cars have cycled through. But for Formal, I should say, it's pretty simple and straightforward. Now more than ever, I need qualifying laps for the next 24 minutes and 49 seconds.
Yeah, it does look like he is starting to pull out a little bit of a gap over Will Bamber. Now, that's something he can't do too many times. One of the few places here at Road America where you do have to think about track limits, and he got up beyond the section of curbing that is allowed as long as you keep your at least one wheel, right side wheel, in contact with that curbing that has the perpendicular white lines in it to the outside of turn one, then you're good. But he was definitely over that, and you do that a couple more times and all of a sudden that becomes another penalty, and that's probably too much to overcome.
Well, absolutely, and the officials are going to look at that, and they're going to warn you first. Then they may warn you again. It just depends on how egregious it is. But I think it's a lot like baseball, 3 strikes and you're out. So it'll be interesting to see if we end up with a warning on car number 1 for that excursion in turn 1. Car 68 getting a penalty for a short pit stop, and it was short enough that it'll be a drive-through penalty. If it's just less than a second short, there's a multiplier that gets added, and that time is added at the end of the race. But if it's longer than that, there's a problem, and it turns into a drive-through. That's exactly what it is for the 68, and indeed, strike number 1 for car number 1. Turn 1 warning, track limits.
Yep, that's what we thought. It was pretty cut and dry when we saw it, and especially as the leader on his strategy, there'll be a lot of eyes on this car, and everyone knows what they're trying to accomplish here, build that gap as much as possible. And visually, he is doing that. Will Bamber seems to be drifting a little bit further and further behind. Danny Formal doing what he needs to do in this situation, but he does need to keep it tidy through turn 1 for the remaining 23 minutes.
Well, and like you said, the problem is once you're on the radar screen, you're on the radar screen, right? And so the penalty on the start gets people's attention, and then the first track limits violation, now there are 2 marks, right? And so the car is being looked at even more closely now because you're drawing attention. Bamber out there as well. I believe it was Bamber in the black and yellow.
Yes.
Ooh, Nick Persing up the inside of the 4, and man, that was close. And you look at that, and it's one of those deals where you may not really want to make the pass there, Ryan, because you can get repassed down this long straightaway. It looks like Persing's going to hold that position, but it really checked up the number 4, kind of held him to the outside. Colin Queen said, hey, I want to continue this race, so he stayed out of it. There's the 29 of Bamber.
And Persing had started this pit sequence in second, but remember, he's driving as a single driver, which is rare in the pro class, and consequently, he had to spend 5 seconds longer in the pit lane. You can see what that has meant. It's cost him a ton of position because he had been in front of this black and yellow car of Bamber prior to the pit stops, and now you can see how much further back he is at this stage. That's the penalty you take, and the reason that rule is in place is there's a thought where a driver that's been in the car for a stint already, it already knows the track conditions, is already in a nice rhythm, so there's an inherent advantage to that. That's why single driver lineups have to take that extra time in the pits, but it can be punitive as we're seeing.
So Bamber now being shown just over 4 seconds behind Danny Formal, and Formal laying down those qualifying laps, seeing how far he can pull out in front. a lot of times it's not the driver's mistake. If you go back to the disastrous finish that the #1 Wayne Taylor Racing team had at Watkins Glen in both races, one of them was a short pit stop, which dropped them back in the final order, and then race number 2 was a mechanical, so it wasn't a driver's problem. Today, it's a driver that makes the mistakes, and as competitive as Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America is, you can't afford mistakes, whether that's from the team side or from the driver's side. If you do, you will pay the price.
Well, that's why motorsport is a team sport at the end of the day. Every part in that team, every cog in the machine has a role to play, and on race day has to do it perfectly in order to get the result. Just one little mistake, a miscalculation by the team releasing the car too soon from the pit box, the miscalculation from the driver assessing risk versus reward. Anything like that can be massively consequential, as we saw for the one car at Watkins Glen. That cost them dearly in the championship. They had such a great start to their season, 3 podiums and 2 wins in the first 4 races, but had basically nothing out of the Glen, and they find themselves all the way down in 3rd in points coming into this weekend, on the back foot and needing to recover.
Shot of 68, Kiko Porto. They had penalty that they needed to serve for that short pit stop, so they've been in and out. That leaves Swarmal up front now, 4.6 seconds to the good, and that's going to be big. He needs to keep doing that, seeing how far he can pull away, and you really have to look back and go, right now, where would that put him? And it would put him, I believe, like in 5th in class, and that would be a huge point swing. If the 29 stayed there in 2nd, it would hand them the win. Jason Hart aboard the 67. Leading in Pro-Am right now. That's a great recovery after the problem they had yesterday. Conrad Geist with that spin at the exit of the kink yesterday and managed to miss all the hard stuff that's out there, right, Ryan? And they recovered. They got that car back on track. It's running well today. Jason Hart leads at Pro-Am, Doyle in Am, and Nick Grote once again setting the pace in LB Cup.
Yeah, that was amazing yesterday to have a spin in the kink, and you pointed out that there have been some changes made to the circuit in that area that might have been the saving grace for Conrad Geist yesterday, but whatever the case, managed to spin it and continue without hitting anything in the kink. They still finished 4th, but it could have been a whole lot more. This is the kind of result they need. They're embroiled in that Pro-Am championship too, and have a little ground to make up after losing points yesterday, only finishing in 4th.
Well, they're doing what they need to do, right? They're in front of the championship leaders right now, and that's where they need to be on the racetrack. They're 4 points in arrears to Trinka and Karlinska. So right now, Jason Hart not only wants to stay in this position, he'd love to see the 11 drop back a little bit. And we know that Nicky Hayes is very, very quick aboard that number 30, and he's right there on the 11, so we'll see. This could turn into a really good battle and could have big implications in the championship.
Certainly could. Here's a car looking to rebound from a tough day yesterday. Leader in the M class here today, it's Graham Doyle. He's got Karlinskis behind him right now. That's not a car in the same class, but this is not helping Karlinskis out at all as he tries to pull away from Nicky Hayes. But for Doyle, yesterday was one to forget, finished well down the order, and that's not something they've done much of here this season. They've been the dominant force, he and Glenn McGee, in the AM class with 5 wins coming into this weekend. And so, as I mentioned earlier, yesterday was only the 2nd time all season that they had failed to win the race. They had won 5 out of 6 coming in. Now it's 5 out of 7, but they're solidly out in front in class right now.
Well, it changed the championship complexion. Now just 14 points is the lead. So it went from 26, I should say, to 14. A gain of 12 points for David Staub yesterday. So yeah, you look at Doyle right now doing what he needs to do, try to stretch that lead back out. 57, a good run again today. With the win yesterday, Nick Grote. He had some problems yesterday too, though, and managed to hold on and take the victory. And good for him with Martin Drummond being out and the problems for Rocky T. Bulldog, like we talked about. That is going to be a big, big weekend for Nick Grote if he can continue to score maximum points today.
right, and he is solidly leading in his class. He has about 5 cars in between himself and the next closest, which would be Chris Tasca, who's having a really strong day once again. Got his first podium at Watkins Glen and runs in second currently in LB Cup. But yeah, for growth, this is picture perfect. Oh, problems there.
Slade Stewart at the exit of turn 14, I'm going to imagine he drops a left rear wheel and probably hooks the car back across the right. We'll have to see what happened. And shedding a little bit of body work as well. But tell you what, I'm looking at the time right now and the gaps. Danny Formal doing exactly what he needs to do. His last lap was a 2:05.4 to a 2:06.3 for Will Bamber. Now Bamber may have been caught up in traffic. Slade Stewart back up to speed and through turn 1. But Danny Formal is absolutely flying, and the good news is when you look at the gap, even with that 10-second penalty, he would finish in third. There's Slade Stewart at the top of the screen. Just gets out there. We've seen that incident multiple times throughout the weekend. Yes, these Lamborghini Huracan Super Trofeo Evo 2s have traction control, but they don't have stability control. And what I mean by that is it keeps the rear tires from spinning, but it's not going to diagonally use the braking system to keep the car straight and so on and so forth. Stability control and traction control, two very different things. And so it's also not active when you're off throttle. So it's one of those deals where if you get a little loose and come off the throttle, that stability control isn't going to save you. So I think that's just what we've seen. Multiple incidents, apex out this weekend of cars losing the rear end.
Yeah, saw him go for that ride, backed it into the tire barrier, but things seem copacetic now. Slade Stewart continuing on, down in 7th in class, 25th in the overall order, and just trying to get back into his rhythm. Back to the front, though, and Danny Formal, you said it, it's been really impressive what he's been able to do these last few laps. He's now 7.2 seconds clear of P2. He needs to get 10 seconds ahead to make sure he preserves this win, but he only needs 0.7 more to effectively move himself into third. Right now, he would drop back to 4th with that 10-second penalty assessed post-race. Huffaker is within the 10-second margin, but at this pace, it won't be for long. So Formal doing exactly what he needs to do. Handed a difficult hand, I think it's safe to say, with that penalty when he began his stint. His teammate had that jumped restart. But now Formal in the lead, in clear air, and building the gap that he needs.
Well, I think the clear air is what's absolutely critical as Danny Formal enters the carousel. Next car on our GPS screen, anyway, is just leaving Canada Corner, so that is massively clear racetrack in front of Danny Formal. He should not get held up at all. The problem is neither will his nearest pursuers, so they all have clean racetrack to work with. Bamber has pulled away from Huffaker just a little bit. That's going to allow him to concentrate forward. What Danny Formal really wants is a fight between 2nd, 3rd, 4th, and 5th, so those guys can focus on themselves, slow down a little bit while they battle, and that would give Danny Formal an even greater lead. As they go through this last timing segment, though, it looks like Formal now, if it were to end this way, and they never do end this way, right? If it were to end this way, he would still be 2nd place.
Yeah, pretty amazing what he's been able to do, building the gap.
He needs more.
He does. But he has time. He still has 12 minutes. But that figures to be 5 laps.
Yeah, but what he can't do is allow Bamber and De La Torre to gain more points in the championship. That would spread the lead again. He needs to always finish in front and try to steal points away. Take a look at this battle. It's the number 2, Jim Hepworth. Good move there on the 10, but then Graham Doyle tries to come back. Great move by Hepworth.
Yeah, that's for the lead in the AM class, too. Let's not lose sight of that. Hepworth and Lindsey Brewer, they've finished 2nd 3 races in a row. How hungry do you think they are to get on the top step?
That would be their maiden win in the category. And for Rafa Racing, they have been so successful in every series that they've run in. It would be another feather in their cap to get that duo aboard the number 2 into victory lane. So right now, Jim Hepworth doing the job that she needs to do to get them there. And I'll tell you what, Lindsey Brewer fine opening stint, even though she didn't get a lot of time in the car. This pairing has really seemed to gel. They struggled a little bit first round at Sebring, but then 5 podium finishes in the last 6 races. So they have come together, and it may pay big time dividends here today in race number 2 of the weekend.
Here's a big penalty. Car 29, this is Will Bamber. A 10-second penalty coming their way for working on the car outside of the pit box. So that is a reprieve, effectively, for the 1 car as long as this thing stays green.
Oh, it's done. I mean, if it stays green, and it's got to stay green for Danny Vermael, he would still have the victory because Huffaker is 11 seconds in arrear. So even with that 10-second penalty for the number 1 and a 10-second penalty for Bamber, Danny Vermael would still have the victory. And more importantly, it's going to move Bamber and De La Torre behind Huffaker, and actually even further back in the order. This would be huge for Vermael and Ericsson.
Yeah, I think this would put Bamber and De La Torre back to 5th as they run. So that is massive. You think about the difference in points. 2nd place pays 12 points. 5th place pays 6. So that is a huge swing there that plays right into the hands of Vermael and Ericsson. But again, this is all contingent on it staying green to the end and not erasing their advantage, because that's really the one way, barring a mistake on track or something mechanical going wrong. But that's the other way that this could all escape the number 1 team of Ericsson and Vermael here.
Understand the 41, Paul Nimshoff, Mark Miller behind the wall. They had an incident yesterday, that car not working well. Here's a look at the 10. That was odd. In turn 5, car starts to turn in, and for Doyle, all of a sudden, kind of a hook back to the right. I don't know if it was just a little bit loose and he corrected more than he needed to, but that was an odd moment.
Yeah, it sure was. And, he had dropped to 2nd. David Staub was only a couple of seconds behind, so Staub might be able to reel in Doyle before this is all said and done. Back up his great run from a day ago.
Back up to speed, the car looks normal now. Sneaks it in just a little bit early with the turn in, but I wonder if he's feeling something in that car that is just not right. Obviously, we talked about the success that he and Glen McGee have had with the victories they've had this season. Did not have a good day yesterday, as you chronicled, and yeah, loose coming off the corner there. So you wonder if something might be amiss aboard the number 10.
Doesn't happen often with a team like Wayne Taylor Racing. They've been so strong all season and for many, many years, in fact, in the championship. But yeah, it just doesn't seem like that car is doing what Graham wants it to do.
Tell you what's impressive is the black number 99 that just went by right there. I say impressive, obviously off speed, but the idea that they've gotten the 99 back on track for Rocky T. Bolduc is pretty impressive. He's doing a great job of staying out of the way. He has a problem. Remember, that car is wounded. Big hit on the right side in that incident with John Hirschberg as they headed down the hill into turn 5 on the opening lap. You can see that just massive wound on the right side of the 99. They got the car back out there, but obviously it is not running at speed, and Rocky will bring it to pit lane. No, he's just going to stay out of the way, and I think what he's doing is they've looked at the championship and just said, you know what? We need to get out there. We need to finish. We need to score some points because we need to try to stay in contention in this championship. We need to get as many points as we possibly can, and as long as the series will let us run and we stay out of the way and we don't cause any problems, we're going to collect some points.
Yeah, you only lost 1 lap, so if someone in the class were to have trouble here in the next couple of laps, presumably he could pick up another position, and with that, an additional point or 2 if more people drop out. So that would be the incentive for him to stay out, if at all possible. Really quick work by the team, actually, to get that car turned around and back out. The Rafa Racing guys did a really good job. And again, I think you're right, thinking big picture, thinking championship there for Rocky Bolduc, just trying to limit the damage here on what has been a very disappointing weekend across the board.
You familiar with deep diving, Brian, you know, where the diver goes down several hundred feet without the help of oxygen and so on and so forth?
I'm familiar with the concept. I don't quite know why anyone would want to do that, but yes.
I'm kind of thinking that's Wayne Taylor Racing's crew right now in the #1 car. I don't think they have taken a breath from the time the penalty was announced for the 29 until the checkered flag falls, because they are so nervous right now. A full course caution would change everything. Right now, they're in the catbird seat. They've got a problem for the championship leader. They'll score maximum points. Life is great, but you pointed this out. A full course caution that brings this field back together changes everything. I'm sure they are holding their breath, chewing their nails, you name it down there. A lot of nerves in the Wayne Taylor Racing camp.
Yeah, exactly. With 10 seconds added to their time post-race right now, the car they're comparing themselves to is the world speed car of Scott Huffaker, who's running in third and is 13 seconds behind the lead. The reason that's the comparison car is that Bamber also has a 10-second penalty coming post-race. So right now, Formal would be roughly 3 seconds to the good as long as they stay like this with these gaps. But as soon as that gap comes down, and it certainly would if there were to be a full course yellow, then the math changes completely. And actually, it would be Huffaker who would be sitting pretty. A yellow would effectively promote that car to the lead of the race, and Persing would be up to second.
Yeah, a lot of drama going on here in race #2, and we talk about the championship implications. Mistakes made by the drivers today, mistakes made by crews today, and they've had huge implications, not only in the outcome of this race, Ryan, potentially, because we're not there yet, but also in the championship. And understand that there's been a call down to Wayne Taylor Racing that representatives from the team need to go to race control immediately following this race. So some conversations yet to be had. Don't know the topic of those conversations, but this one may not be done just yet.
Hey, you've been in race control. Do you ever call anyone in just to chat, make dinner plans, anything like that?
Yeah, typically no.
Yeah, that's not usually a good sign. Bit ominous for sure. We'll see what it affects. There are several cars under the Wayne Taylor Racing banner, so there's no guarantee that conversations about this car here. I had a sharp-eyed viewer point out to me about the 10 car. We saw Graham Doyle struggling a little bit. That car appeared to be bouncing in a strange way early in the race, even at the initial start perhaps. So they've been dealing with problems. And then the other team car, the 69, that was an early out after being caught up in some contact there on the first lap of the race. So a couple of different directions this could go, but as they run on track, it's this car, Danny Formal, Wayne Taylor Racing, with a 10-second lead on the road over Will Bamber with less than 2 laps to go.
You know, I typically say, Ryan, it doesn't matter how much you win by, you just need to win the race, right? It doesn't matter whether it's a 1/10 of a second or 10 seconds. But today it does matter because of the penalties that have been handed down, both for the #1 team and the number 29, just behind being shown in second place. Those penalties will be handed down at the end of the race when they go across the line. Times will be adjusted, finishing orders will be adjusted as the penalties are applied, so it'll be interesting to see. And for Danny Formal, this young man, he's such a cool customer, but he has this, I'll call it energy to him. He always pushes to be up front. Still a very accomplished go-kart racer, still races, still wins, still looks for championships in karting, as does he in the IMSA WeatherTech Sports Car Championship. He and Trent Hinman with the win last time out in GTD at Mosport, or Canadian Tire Motorsport Park as we now know it, and today looking for another win in Lamborghini Super Trofeo. Up the front straightaway, should see the white flag this time.
The only thing to concern himself with is there is some traffic up the road. He's got about a 4-second buffer to the car that is effectively second, on adjusted time. That's the third place car of Scott Huffaker, but he can't lollygag working through this traffic here, Brian. He's got to clear it cleanly, but also safely and quickly as well. He can't dilly-dally, because if he loses too much time here, all of a sudden that 10-second penalty starts to loom large again.
Absolutely, and typically you would look at it and say, hey, you've got an 11-second lead over the second place car. Just be cool, calm, and collected. But as you pointed out, you can't. And by the way, those are two cars racing for position. Nobody's just going to hand it to Danny Vermael. They're focused on their own race.
Yeah, this is not what he wants to see at all. A couple of cars duking it out here on what could be their final lap too, and this is really holding him up here, Brian.
Absolutely it is. That's Wilson aboard the 37, and they're having a go. They're trying to fight their own fight, win their own race, but now Vermael is through, clear sailing, but that's going to cost him a couple of seconds.
Wow, that was not at all what he wanted to encounter on his final lap here at Road America. Now he is clear, leaves those two to duel amongst themselves, and hopefully hasn't lost too much time trying to work his way through that traffic.
Scott Huffaker hoping he has lost a lot of time, right? He and his World Speed crew are going, hold him up, guys, hold him up. But Vermael is through, and I think he got through pretty easily. It probably cost him a second or so, but I wouldn't think much more than that. Through the King, down to Canada Corner, one last time. Oh, and a big problem. That is a big off. The number 12 impact on driver's right. I believe that is on the run down to turn 3. Vermael out of the final corner. Yellows will be flying down there, but they're not going to go full course caution and affect his race. Danny Vermael, Wayne Taylor Racing, and Hampus Eriksson make it a perfect weekend at Road America, but it's going to have an asterisk beside it.
Full course yellow is out, so now we'll see. I think that was great news for Vermael. Bamber crosses the line and on adjusted time drops all the way back to 5th. So now we wait for Jason Hart. What a bounce back. After he and Conrad Geis had trouble yesterday, they crest the hill, and the TR3 Racing pairing takes the victory here at Road America in the Pro-Am class.
And that's their first victory of the season. And now you talk about celebration. What about this? Jim Hepworth behind the wheel of the number 2. She shares with Lindsey Brewer. Rafa Racing, they're going to take the victory in the AM category. Congratulations. They had 5 podiums coming in. It's 6 now, but that 6th one is probably the most special so far this season.
Great to see after 3 straight second place finishes to come across the line in first. Hepworth put the move on Graham Doyle late in the race as well to take the lead and then pulled away. Fantastic result for that pairing in the Rafa Racing squad. Great to see Anthony Bullock out of his car after that heavy impact as well.
We were 2 minutes and 7 seconds from disaster, and what I mean by that, Ryan, had that incident happened 2 minutes earlier, we would have immediately gone full course caution. The field would have been gathered up, and this would have been a very, very different outcome for Danny Vermael and Hampus Eriksson.
It's true, it would have been costly. Here's the checkered flag for the LB Cup winner, Nick Grote, who ends up sweeping the weekend, Brian, on a day in which, and a weekend in which, his championship rivals have faltered. This could be massive for him in the LB Cup title chase. He picks up a pair of wins and extends that advantage now in a meaningful way with just 4 races to go this season.
Yeah, and for Rocky T. Bolduc, he did what he could do, right? In a damaged car, he stays out on the racetrack, collects 6 place points. Let's see if we can find out what happens to Bullock. Gets out wide over that curb, loses the back end. Man, that was a huge hit.
Yeah, massive. 2 big hits, actually, coming across the track, and then gets the other side as well. And what I noticed before, you can see it here, the rear wheel's still spinning at this stage. That's very odd indeed. Glad to see Anthony out of the car and looks like more or less okay after 2 big impacts.
Yeah, you can use, obviously, we've seen everybody use that additional curbing to the outside of one, but it comes with its own risk, and you see that. You get out there on it, and if you lose the back end a little bit, it is bumpy out there, and it's hard to get it gathered back up, and it will bite you. But for Danny Vermael and Hampus Eriksson, they dodged one today, Ryan. They sweep the weekend. They've done what they needed to do in the championship. It's going to change complexion for sure with Bamber and De La Torre back there in 5th. It'll be interesting to find out what these conversations are about after the race, because I'm pretty sure that race control wasn't particularly pleased with both the start and the restart for the number one, and certainly the penalties that were incurred.
Well, that will be sorted out post-race, but at least in terms of what they did on track, a picture-perfect weekend for the pairing, scoring maximum points, 2 poles, 2 wins. Congratulations to all the various winners here in the different classes. Nick Grote again, down at 19th overall, but winning an LB Cup. Had to dodge some misfortune yesterday. It looked like a more smooth run today to pick up another win and extend his lead in the championship.
Yeah, Jason Hart, what a great job that he did. And it's one of the reasons why I love the Pro-Am category, Ryan. You get the Pro and the Am driver in there, and that Pro is the coach. He's in the car on the same weekend with his student, and it's just a great learning tool for these drivers to come along, and it helps everybody improve. Congratulations on that team for their victory. And like we said, all of the championships, all 4 of them, will have a very different look as we head into the Indianapolis Motor Speedway. Crazy weekend for Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America here at Road America. What do you take away from it, Brian?
Well, you just don't know what to expect on one of these weekends. The championship storylines got thrown on their head in a couple of different classes. We're certainly heading to Indy with a different complexion in the title chase.
Talk about a different complexion. The Indianapolis Motor Speedway, it is a completely different ballpark than this one is. Frustration, elation. We saw it all at Road America. It's Lamborghini Super Trofeo North America. We'll do it all again in September from Indianapolis.